Hi everybody, my name is Monica Bessom and I am one of your media site classmates. I'm from Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and this is my first source presentation on the Pact of Omar. So question number one asks where the source and the author background is. And the author immediately goes on to announce that this letter is to Omar from the Christians. The previous story I went back to read because it automatically in the commentaries kind of referred to it. And it said that those Christians may have been from Damascus, and further commentaries specify Syria as the main region, or possibly Mesopotamia or Israel. And the writing had to do with the way of trying to distinguish the Muslim way of life. And there is mention in that text where it said, quote, was identical to those that Christians had previously imposed on non-Christian subjects on page 15. Moving on to question number two, what is the source, title, and genre? The Pact of Omar is the title. The genre is that of similar agreements being formed in the area around the same subjects of religious rights. Question three is give a brief synopsis of the source. The Pact of Omar establishes the agreement that the Christians will do no harm to the Muslims, yet they will do their best to live in harmony and, quote, will not harbor any of their enemies, end quote, page 16. The subject of conversion immediately comes up, and only to benefit the Muslims, and that there will be no one stopped if they should choose the path of the way of the Muslims. Also, that there will be a separation in how they dress, and that there will be no imitation in order to set themselves apart and distinguish the difference between the Christians and the Muslims in the area. The harmony would not allow for Christians to use emblems on their churches of crosses, and also to make sure that there was no raised voices or wailing or practices during their burial rituals that could possibly disturb the Muslim neighbors. If they were not to adhere to that, protection would end, and they would not be treated as, quote, enemies, excuse me, and that the protection would end, and that they would be treated as enemies and rebels. On page 16 is where that quote comes from. Question number four, what themes or ideas does the source emphasize? And the themes emphasized are harmony and coexistence. There's also an undertone of the establishment of a way of life that could not encroach on the Muslims or disturb them, and that they were the priority. The cancellation of the pact, if not respected or violated, will be the theme of what they will enforce. Question five, the context. What contemporary events, both to the events described in the time of the source's composition, might have shaped this source? During the 9th century, the Christians were considered the people of the book, and those that were seen as followers of Christ. And Christ was considered an admired teacher to the Muslim believers, that he lived a moral life. And so oftentimes I take a lot of religion courses as well as history, and oftentimes the people of the book would be Judeo-Christians, Jews, and Muslims. And so in the Muslim belief, there is a respect because Ishmael is the son of Abraham, who was born to Hagar the slave. And so there is a point of reference and a coexistence that's already there in the religion. The events were not new to them, as they were previously mentioned, and there was previous mention to the similar edicts on Christians, imposing these same acts on non-Christians in their own regions. And the Islamic world was growing. This document would be one that would be used in what we now know as Sharia law, and would form the way that outsiders were tolerated or not tolerated, as long as they did not violate these decisions in the pact. Question six, why is it important historical source? What type of people or perspectives is it most useful for understanding, and what does it tell us about them? The importance is to see that Christians were not, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm trying to read this question and it's not making sense to me. So the importance is to see that if Christians were to inhabit communities of Muslims, they were considered second-class citizens and not treated equally. They were merely tolerated within the scope of the rules, And I think the perspective is showing that there was a level of enslavement that was presented and graciousness on behalf of Muslims. It showed that there was a transition of power that would take the peaceful living situation and ultimately end in an unwillingness to coexist. And so question number 7, how did the source change or develop your opinion on this historical topic? The source to me illuminates that Christians were not viewed as blameless, and that at one time they imposed similar consequences to non-Christians. And also that it shows that there was coexistence, and that at one point there were people that were happy to live in a constrained version of their Christianity, and they were okay abiding by those laws and not converting. And the area of how it is now imposed kind of worries me as far as Sharia law goes. And as the Islamic world would grow, Omar would no longer take a peaceful route, and many outsiders would be forced to convert or die. And my question ending this is, at what point did the straw break the camel's back? If they were peacefully coexisting and there was people that agreed. So I hope my presentation came across thoughtful and answering those questions. And I look forward to seeing other people's presentations via the lecture. Thank you. Have a great day.